Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Our first story highlights how a little compassion can lead to unforeseen consequences, and sometimes those consequences can turn the tide in our favor. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Relocate our office space? See how that works out for you. This one is a small victory, but was super satisfying for me, so I wanted to share. I worked for a large international accounting firm with offices all over the country. Our boss, Karen, was well-liked until she became the boss, a smiling assassin type who only cared about her position and looking good in front of the higher-ups. All about the numbers, even if what we had to do to get those numbers didn't make sense. So here's the story. My team, about 12, were primarily based in the London office, but once a week, per my contract and everyone else's, were required to work in a remote office ages from London. The place was miserable. A building in the middle of nowhere, one tiny corner shop for snacks next to a motorway. The closest place to eat was a 15-minute drive away. We all hated it. But hey-ho, it was only once a week. Anyway, when our boss got promoted, her sole life mission was to cut costs. Everything from stopping overtime to telling us we had no stationary budget for pens and had to take from other team stores, to allowing only one meal on social drinks and making comments at the meal when someone chose theirs to be the more expensive option. E.g., are you really choosing that? It's expensive. I'm not sure we're going to have enough budget. This is considering all other teams went for large, fancy dinners all the time, unlimited drinks, etc. At one point, she decided that the miserable location should be our primary office, and she wanted us all to go there 4 days a week instead of 1. All but one of our team were living in London. This meant for me a 2.5-hour journey one way instead of 1 hour. After a few months, this really took its toll. The assistant manager, a friend of mine, told me that she said in passing to him that this office was less of a cost on our team budget than the London office. What a shock. I decided to speak to HR and see what my options are. Maybe get an exception? Well, turns out we had a policy that anything over your normal travel hours to the closest office location to your home could be used as your working hours. AKA, the extra 1.5 hours each way would be considered working hours, so I could arrive at 10:30 instead of 9 a.m. and leave at 4 instead of 5:30. Also, if trains and things were delayed or canceled, that would also be included in working hours. This happened often as this place was in the middle of nowhere. Infrequent trains, so I would often arrive at 11:30. I forwarded the emails with HR to her and explained how I would be complying with this policy. She agreed, but tried in a meeting to tell me this was an exception for me and not to tell anyone else. Well, I told everyone else. And we all began complying with the policy. This meant we spent less time in the office and productivity dwindled. She mentioned this a lot in meetings. I would often, respectfully, point out that it didn't make sense to force us to travel to this office and its effects. I was the main one speaking up about this. At some point, maybe a few months later, she told me I could go to 5 days in the London office, but again, this was a special arrangement for me and that she appreciated me and was making accommodations only for me. She also said she would tell everyone I had special circumstances that allowed me this arrangement and to keep our conversation confidential. I honestly think she just got fed up with me pointing out how our productivity's lower only because she made us travel there 4 days a week. Of course, I complied, but the team noticed I wasn't with them, and let's just say it caused a bit of a riot. I didn't say anything, but they figured it out themselves. No special circumstances here. Slowly but surely, one after the other, my colleagues started joining me in London, getting their own special arrangements with her. At some point, the majority were in London. Eventually, it was just her and the only other local colleague at this office while we were in London. We all had a good chuckle about when she would cave. It took a good few weeks. Then we got the email that our permanent location going forward would be London, 5 days a week, and the one local employee to that terrible office would work from home and come in once a month. It may have happened anyway, but I'd like to think that me speaking to HR and finding that policy at least had a hand in getting us moved back to London. As for Karen, I could go on about so many stories with her, but I did eventually leave for other reasons directly related to her. Unfortunately, she's still in the same position at that company. I do, however, enjoy seeing her checking my LinkedIn profile from time to time, and hopefully noticing that since I left, I've gone from a junior to the same position as her. She sounds like the kind of manager who decides that if you're selling X for Y amount, why not double Y and make twice as much? Doesn't work like that, Karen. And our second story. Boss forced me to give away my hard-earned money, so I sabotaged her bonus. Every year, company I work for has a huge fundraising campaign. They solicit from all employees to voluntarily contribute towards charities directly from their paycheck, pre-tax. You're encouraged and very heavily pressured to donate to pre-selected charities of their choice in smaller amounts per month for the year or one lump sum. Think lots of email reminders and signage all over the company walls, ploys of having your name entered for prize drawings. Didn't matter how much you contribute, although prizes were always won by company executives and leadership. The company had running totals for departments of how many people were contributing. They wanted 100% participation from all departments. It was supposed to be private and anonymous and only show numbers. I quickly learned it wasn't as anonymous or voluntary as advertised. If one or two people were holding back, they were usually approached by the administrator and pressured to participate. What's really strange is the administrator of my department at the time, who was usually very stoic and stern, became giddy about the charity campaign. It was weird and raised alarms. One year I was struggling hard, so I wasn't going to contribute. I was so broke. But here comes admin lady into the office suite. We're almost to 100% participation. Claps, giddy squeal. She looks around and starts to question each person. She was eyeballing me the whole time, trying to subtly make her way to me. She gets to my desk. Have you made your contribution yet? Without thinking, should have just told her it was personal, I told her I was still considering which charity. She pulls a chair over to my desk with a sob story from one of the charities and how the money helps those in need. She asked me to pull up the charity website and literally walked me through entering my contribution. So as a good little young naive worker, I did as I was being basically forced to do and contributed a minimal $24 a year, $2 a month, donation on my measly salary. I made our department reach 100% participation. Who cares, right? The next year, I purposely waited until the last second to make my contribution to see if I got the same one on the one chat with admin lady. Sure enough, here she comes with the same sob story she's memorized and would baby talk me through making my contribution while she watched. I soon became her target to get rid of. She was out for my job, so she separated me from people I got along well with, including my direct boss, and made me report directly to her. I knew I had to get out of there quickly or I'd lose my job. I applied for positions and wound up transferring to another department within a few weeks. It ended up being an amazing move and one of my favorite positions to date. In this new department, they organized and ran multiple company, city, and county-wide events, one of the biggest being the charity campaign for the whole company. I brought up to my new coworkers how incredibly weird my previous admin lady was at that time of year. They said of course she wanted 100% participation. Admins get a bonus when their departments are 100% participation. You can bet your sweet rear ends I started telling everyone in my previous department about that little tidbit. The next year, that department had one of the lowest participation efforts. Being that I was in a better place in life and actually liked my new department and leadership, I began willingly contributing because the new admin would take that bonus and buy everyone lunch or some form of thanks. And our last story. Karen Neighbor. We share a driveway with our neighbor. Upon buying our home, we also had to sign on to a contract regarding the driveway, which is obviously aimed towards them. The contract states that we both not allowed to intimidate, harass, threaten, or obstruct egress of the driveway. Our neighbor has hated us from the beginning, and I mean before we even moved in. When my SO and the realtor went to visit the residence while I was at work, they both said they could swear the husband was polishing his shotgun on his porch. Upon moving in, they have done a lot to intimidate us. She's gone on to yell at me from her porch that I'm fat while I rake leaves. I am overweight, but that doesn't warrant the abuse. I'm working on it. She screamed at delivery drivers, poor souls, to the point they do not dare drive up the shared driveway, and we don't have a consistent delivery driver anymore. I don't blame them. They've also yelled at our tenant's Uber driver, calling him an N-word. Nobody deserves that. She also watches us all the time. We spend about $7,000 on a fence for privacy, and she put a chair on her property on the only open spot to watch us. And the other night, she walked out to the street to peek in on me having a fire pit in our backyard, where a fire is completely legal in our state, and I do it safely. Things came to a boiling point when we had a contractor over to survey the property. When he was leaving, she claimed he had driven over her grass, 2 inches if even. We've looked at city prints of her property survey, and one says that she doesn't own that grass, and another says that she owns straight from the shared driveway straight to her home. Either way, she lost her crap. She was calling him the foulest of names, and I went out with my phone recording and told her to leave him alone because he's just trying to leave. Long story short, she threatened to call the cops, but just pee-footed about on her phone, so the next day, we took it to the police station and filed a report. Turns out she's been harassing neighbors before us. We're not the first police report due to the property disputes, and the cops were very sympathetic. They talked to Karen and her husband and told her further harassment would lead to charges. They stopped harassing our delivery drivers after that, but Karen didn't stop. She now harasses us from her own property, so I don't know what to do. I love to be outside and always dreamed of having a lovely garden and being able to sit outside and enjoy it, but now I just don't want to go outside in our garden anymore. I water my plants at night now. We stay inside with the shutters closed. I didn't move from a big city to be shut in like this. Cops have advised us to call them when she confronts us again. Update. We filed for a restraining order and the court granted us a temporary order while the case was pending. The restraining order required her to cease all forms of harassment and maintain a certain distance from our property. On the day of the hearing, we presented our evidence, including videos, photos, and witness statements from delivery drivers and other neighbors who'd also experienced her aggressive behavior. The judge was appalled by the extent of her actions and the impact it had on our lives. The court granted a permanent restraining order, legally binding her to stop all harassment and keep a safe distance from us. Additionally, she was warned that any further instances of trespassing would result in immediate legal consequences. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.